The forgotten sky. Long before telescopes, before NASA, the Sumerians drew maps of the stars. But among these maps is a planet we have never officially discovered. Why? In the heart of ancient Mesopotamia, where the Euphrates once ran wild and the ziggurats reached toward the heavens, clay tablets were carved with a precision that baffles modern scientists. These were not simple star charts to guide farmers or sailors. No, they seemed to be something far more sophisticated. One in particular stands out. It's known today as the Mul Apin, a series of astronomical records said to be thousands of years older than most civilizations even knew what a star was. Its markings map the constellations, trace the movements of planets, and record seasonal changes. But hidden in these lines and symbols lies something extraordinary, something modern astronomy cannot quite explain. Among the familiar celestial bodies, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, the Sumerians depicted another, a large, wandering planet beyond our known system. Not Pluto, not any asteroid. Something different. Something they called Nibiru. To them, Nibiru was not merely a point of light in the sky. It was the planet of crossing, a world whose appearance in our skies signaled cosmic upheavals and changes on Earth. But here is the problem. In all our centuries of stargazing, no telescope has ever officially found it. And yet, the Sumerians recorded it with such certainty, as if they had seen it with their own eyes. Was this knowledge passed down from their gods? The same deities they claimed came from the heavens. Gods like Enki, the wise bringer of knowledge, and Ninhursag, the goddess who shaped life itself. If the legends are true, and the black stones of Ninhursag once encoded a genetic blueprint, could the same celestial visitors have left behind a map, showing exactly where they came from? In the ruins of Nineveh, archaeologists unearthed a library of over 20,000 tablets, many filled with astronomical data so precise it rivals our modern calculations. Some scholars believe these maps may not be symbolic at all, but literal records of the skies, as they appeared to someone far from Earth. If that is true, then the Sumerians were not merely looking up at the stars, they were looking homeward. And that raises a dangerous question. If this 12th planet is real, why has modern science chosen not to acknowledge it? The unsettling details hidden in clay. In the cool, dim silence of the British Museum's Mesopotamian Gallery, there's a section many visitors pass without a second glance. Behind glass, lying quietly in rows, are small, weathered clay tablets no bigger than a paperback book. Their cuneiform inscriptions look like nothing more than neat patterns of wedges and lines. But for those who can read them, they tell a far more disquieting story. One tablet in particular, catalogued by scholars as simply VA243, has stirred decades of debate. Its surface is marked with symbols that, at first glance, appear to be a scene of reverence, a seated figure, another standing before them, and, above their heads, a grouping of celestial bodies. But this is no ordinary depiction of the night sky. In the center is the sun, unmistakable with its radiant starburst form. Around it, arranged in precise order, are other spheres, planets, drawn with a clarity that should have been impossible for the Sumerians to achieve without telescopes. Even more baffling, there are not 8 or 9 planets depicted, but 12. The extra body, positioned far beyond the orbit of Pluto, is what draws the most attention. It's not a comet, nor a star. Its size and placement suggest it is a planet. The Sumerians had a name for it, Nibiru. A world they described not as myth, but as part of a very real celestial order. The question is, how could they have known it existed? And why do modern astronomers still debate whether such a planet might actually be out there, lurking at the edge of our solar system? Scholars who dismiss the tablet as symbolic art insist the arrangement is merely a stylized way to honor the gods. But those who believe otherwise point to the astonishing accuracy of the other planetary bodies depicted. Accuracies that shouldn't have been possible for a civilization over 5,000 years old. And here's where the link to another mystery emerges. Among the Sumerian deities, one figure stands out: Ninhursag, the goddess of life and creation. In the story we examined just days ago, the so-called black stones of Ninhursag hinted at a profound knowledge of genetics, something far ahead of its time. Now, this star map seems to suggest the Sumerians also possessed astronomical knowledge equally beyond their means. Could both forms of knowledge, biological and cosmic, have come from the same source? The ancients never said they discovered these truths themselves. They claimed their gods taught them. Gods who, according to the tablets, came from the heavens. Gods who walked among them, left them technology, and perhaps a warning about this 12th world. And that warning might be more urgent than we think. The sky above, the secrets below. If you trace the lines of the Sumerian star map closely, something strange happens. The outer ring of stars does not match the sky we see today. Some constellations appear shifted, almost as if the heavens themselves were viewed from somewhere else in the solar system. A vantage point not from Earth, but from deep space. Ancient astronaut theorists, of course, see this as a smoking gun. They suggest that these maps weren't simply symbolic. They were technical, precise depictions of the heavens, possibly drawn by beings who had traveled far beyond our planet. But if that's true, how did this knowledge end up in the hands of the Sumerians 5,000 years ago? Hidden among the tablets, one particular fragment is often overlooked. It shows a cluster of dots, connected by faint, deliberate lines. Near the outer edge is a solitary circle, larger than the rest, surrounded by what looks like a faint elliptical path. It's not labeled, not explained, but in modern astronomy, an elliptical orbit far from the known planets is exactly what we'd expect from a rogue or distant world, something like the hypothesized Planet 9. The Sumerians called it Nibiru, not simply a place but a cyclical visitor. They claimed it moved on a long, sweeping orbit that brought it close to Earth only once every many thousands of years. And when it came near, it brought change, sometimes in the form of knowledge, and sometimes in the form of catastrophe. Now this is where the story grows stranger. A handful of scholars point to the myths of Ninhursag, the goddess we explored in the Black Stones account, as potentially connected. In those legends, Ninhursag is described as coming from the place between the constellations, bringing with her the seeds of life. In the context of the star maps, her origin seems almost astronomically mapped out. Was her story a divine metaphor, or a memory of an arrival from this so-called 12th planet? But here's the most unsettling detail. In the Sumerian arrangement of the solar system, all the planets are accounted for, including Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, long before modern science discovered them. This leaves us with a chilling choice. Either it's a staggering coincidence, or they knew far more about the cosmos than we do today. And still, the greatest question hangs in the air like an uncharted star. If this mysterious 12th planet is real, where is it now? Hidden beyond the icy edges of our solar system? Masked by the blinding light of the sun? Or Is it on its slow, inevitable journey back toward us? The deeper the archaeologists dug, the more unsettling their discoveries became. Hidden beneath layers of clay and collapsed brick walls, they found something unusual: a small chamber, entirely sealed, untouched for thousands of years. Inside lay a set of tablets unlike any the team had ever seen. These weren't ordinary cuneiform records of taxes, trade, or temple offerings. They were charts, intricate circular diagrams etched with precision, showing constellations and celestial alignments. But in the center, dominating the arrangement, was a large symbol. A sun surrounded not by the familiar 9 planets we know from modern science, but by 12 bodies. 12. 2 more than what our solar system officially holds. The researchers knew immediately they were staring at something extraordinary. One of these extra symbols matched no known planet. It was large, elongated in its orbit, marked with an inscription that roughly translated to Nibiru, the crossing. The other seemed to be a smaller, icy object far beyond Pluto's path. At first, the academic community dismissed the find as a mythological embellishment. After all, ancient cultures often added symbolic elements to their astronomy. But as the tablets were studied in greater detail, something unusual emerged. The planetary positions and distances were mathematically accurate, even for Uranus and Neptune, planets that modern humans only confirmed with telescopes thousands of years later. How could the Sumerians possibly have known this? The answer, some whispered, might lie in another controversial discovery: the Black Stone Vault of Ninhursag. In that earlier find, inscriptions told of gods who descended from the heavens, carrying knowledge not meant for mortals. Some of those same symbols were now showing up here, on these star maps, as if to imply the information came from the same source. And then came the most puzzling feature of all: a small set of carved lines leading from the 12th planet's symbol toward Earth, as though it were charting a journey. A cosmic migration route. Why would an ancient star map, thousands of years before the age of rockets, depict a travel path between an undiscovered planet and our world? Some believe this was a memory of a real visitation, preserved through myth. Others think it was a warning, a prediction of a cycle that repeats every few millennia. Whatever the truth, one thing became clear: this wasn't random art. It was a precise record, and it carried intent. But the real shock came when researchers realized the map contained another feature, something we weren't meant to see until the modern age: a coded grid, one that might lead to an astronomical event about to happen again. For a moment, silence stretched across the ancient world. Civilizations shifted, rose, and fell, yet the symbols persisted. The Sumerian star maps, with their precision, seemed to whisper of an age when the sky was more than a canvas of distant lights. It was a record of contact. Some scholars in the modern age began to notice something unsettling. In these maps, the 12th celestial body wasn't just drawn. It was given a path, a long, sweeping arc that took it far beyond the familiar boundaries of our solar system, only to return thousands of years later. It was as if the Sumerians were telling us that this planet was not fixed in our skies, but a traveler, returning on a schedule we had long forgotten. Ancient inscriptions described beings who came from the crossing, a phrase that, when translated carefully, hinted at a cosmic journey. They were not gods in the sense of divinity, but something far more tangible: beings of flesh and intellect who had walked among the people and shaped their destiny. The texts spoke of their gifts: mathematics, agriculture, architecture, and their warnings about cycles that could bring either prosperity or destruction. But why did they leave? And why did the Sumerians seem certain they would return? The further archaeologists dug, both into the ground and into the texts, the more they encountered strange gaps in history. Entire centuries where records ceased, as if great events had been deliberately erased. In some ruins, walls were found with carvings half chiseled away, as if the story they told had become too dangerous to preserve. One theory began to take shape. The planet, this mysterious 12th, might have been the origin of those visitors. And if its orbit brought it close to Earth only once in many millennia, then perhaps its people visited in cycles, leaving behind knowledge, artifacts, and perhaps even traces of themselves. The chilling part? If the Sumerians were right, and if the maps were accurate, then we might be living in the era just before its return. In certain observatories around the world, astronomers have quietly recorded anomalies, gravitational disturbances at the edges of our solar system. Officially, these are unknown objects or noise in the data. But off the record, some admit that something massive, perhaps even planetary, is out there, moving slowly, closer. And in the heart of Iraq, among the buried cities of the Sumerians, a recent and very discreet excavation uncovered a sealed chamber, its walls lined with golden star patterns and a single phrase in cuneiform. When the great shadow crosses the sun, the watchers will descend once more. The question now is not whether the Sumerians knew of this planet, but whether they left us enough time to prepare for what comes with it. The astronomer's puzzle. As the torchlight trembled against the chamber walls, Ilara unrolled one of the most puzzling clay tablets in the collection. Unlike the earlier star charts, simple and precise, this one was a maze of intersecting lines, clusters of cuneiform, and curious spiral symbols unlike anything else in the Sumerian canon. "What am I even looking at?" she muttered, half to herself, half to the flickering shadows. The old man, who had followed her quietly since the excavation began, stepped forward. His voice was low and deliberate. "It is not just a map. It is a story." Ilara's fingers traced the concentric spirals. In the center lay a small, faded impression, what appeared to be a sphere surrounded by smaller orbits. 11 were familiar: the Sun, Moon, and known planets. But there was a 12th, larger than Mars, yet further than Neptune. "This isn't just the Sumerians imagining a world," she whispered. "They charted it." The old man's eyes narrowed. Charted, or remembered. Her mind raced. If these maps were mere myth, why did their planetary placements align so accurately with modern astronomy? Why would a Bronze Age civilization even imagine a planet so distant, one we still debate the existence of today? She noticed something else. Along the outermost spiral, the cuneiform didn't match the familiar Sumerian logograms. They were sharper, older. "These aren't Sumerian," Ilara said, heart pounding. "This script predates them." The old man gave a single nod. "You see now why it was buried. It speaks of the time before the cities, before the rivers had names, when the sky was ruled by travelers from beyond the edge of our world." A chill prickled the back of her neck. "And the 12th planet?" He leaned closer. "Not a planet. A place they called the Crossing." Her pulse quickened. That word, the Crossing, had appeared before, in the half-deciphered fragments linked to the Ninhursag tablets they had unearthed days earlier. Back then, she dismissed it as a ceremonial term, but now... "It's a trajectory," she breathed. They were tracking a moving world. The old man smiled faintly, the kind of smile that holds more warning than warmth. And if it returns? She didn't let him finish. The implications were already spiraling in her mind, much like the etched lines of the map itself. This wasn't just a relic. It was a countdown. The Forbidden Tablets. Deep beneath the archives of the British Museum, far from public view, lies a locked chamber with no official catalogue number. Its existence is not acknowledged in any public records, and only a handful of curators possess keys. According to whispers among former staff, this vault holds the most inconvenient Sumerian tablets, those whose translations were deemed too disruptive to be released. One such artifact, allegedly recovered during a 19th-century dig near Eridu, depicts the complete Sumerian star map in unprecedented detail. But unlike the fragments in public collections, this tablet includes inscriptions that clearly reference a 12th celestial body, Nibiru, described as the wanderer who comes from afar. The text speaks of its infrequent passage through the solar system, bringing with it a cycle of change that reshapes the Earth's fate. According to the museum's own internal correspondences, which leaked briefly before vanishing from online archives, the tablet also contained an ominous warning. When the red sign appears in the heavens, the watchers of Nibiru shall descend again. No scholarly paper has ever been officially published on this find. Instead, the artifact was quietly placed in a temperature-controlled drawer, labeled with a generic reference code, and struck from excavation reports. The secrecy surrounding it mirrors the fate of another controversial set of tablets, those recovered near ancient Lagash in the 1970s. In that case, researchers who translated them found detailed planetary calculations that modern astronomy could not match, equations describing orbital paths, gravitational effects, and alignments that shouldn't have been known to Bronze Age civilizations. Strangely, the lead translator resigned from his post only weeks later, claiming academic burnout, and disappeared from the public eye. The parallels are unsettling. Why do these particular records, out of tens of, thousands of Sumerian tablets, remain hidden? Why is Nibiru consistently the thread that once pulled is cut from history's tapestry? And more disturbingly, if the ancients knew of its return and linked it to catastrophic shifts on Earth, could we already be in the window of its next passage? The Sumerians didn't just map the stars for beauty. They mapped them to prepare. And the more we uncover, the more it seems that what they prepared for may still be ahead. The disappearing planet. The rain had stopped by morning, but the streets of Ur's ruins glistened like obsidian under a pale, reluctant sun. Our camp was quiet, too quiet. Dr. Kadir wasn't at his workstation. His tent flap hung open, and the data pads he'd been working on all night were gone. Only a small clay shard remained, placed in the center of the table like a message. It wasn't from the original site. This shard was freshly broken, edges sharp, the cuneiform pressed hastily into its surface. The sky does not forget. It was unnerving enough to make my pulse quicken, but what really unsettled me was the faint scent of something, burnt copper, lingering in the air. The same scent I had noticed weeks earlier when we first uncovered the tablet that showed the unknown planet. That day, no one saw Kadir again. By evening, our satellite link picked up a strange broadcast. Not from the government, not from any known network, just a faint series of tones, repeating every 7 seconds. When mapped visually, they resembled the same orbital pattern of the hidden planet from the Sumerian star maps. The implication was clear. Someone, or something, was telling us the planet was still out there. But the question wasn't where it was. It was why we were never meant to see it. Ancient Sumerian myth spoke of a time when the gods hid a great land in the sky because it carried the seeds of both creation and destruction. Ninhursag's own seals hinted at this, a place the Divine Mother kept far from human reach. Perhaps, I thought, it wasn't superstition. Perhaps it was protection. That night, while the others slept, I sat by the ruins of the ziggurat, holding the clay shard with Qadir's final message. I looked up at the blanket of stars, and in that stillness I realized the Sumerians may have known something we are just beginning to understand. Sometimes it isn't about what we can't find. It's about what we're not supposed to. The forgotten seal. The final threads of the mystery seemed to pull us back to where it had all begun. The sealed vault beneath the ziggurat's oldest foundations. The place smelled of damp stone and something metallic, as if the air itself had been infused with ancient minerals. The archaeologists had returned, this time with permission from the ministry to conduct a full examination. It took hours to remove the layered clay and copper bands that kept the chamber locked, but when the last seal broke, the door gave way with a deep sigh, a sound like a tomb exhaling after thousands of years. Inside, the chamber was small, almost humble, but the arrangement was precise. Stone benches lined the walls, and on each sat a single clay tablet, covered in fine cuneiform so detailed it seemed almost impossible to have been etched by hand. In the center stood a pedestal, and upon it, the object no one had expected to find. It was not gold, nor jewel, nor weapon. It was a polished, obsidian-black sphere, no larger than a man's head, etched with faint lines that resembled both star charts and the map of a river delta. When light struck it, the grooves lit up like veins of silver. One of the epigraphers whispered that the tablets mentioned the black eye of Anu, an artifact said to contain the memory of the heavens. But one passage stood out above all others, written in a dialect older than any known Sumerian form. When the waters rise and the lights return to the dark sea of the sky, the eye shall guide the faithful to the place of beginnings. The words were haunting, but even more haunting was what followed. An instruction to place the eye in the open air on the night when the wandering sun stands still, the winter solstice. The team was torn. To remove the sphere from its resting place was to risk accusations of theft, but to leave it there meant letting a once-in-a-lifetime chance slip away. And here's the strangest part. The lead archaeologist, Dr. Awan, refused to record the exact coordinates of the vault in the official reports. He claimed it was to prevent looting, but rumors began to spread among the team that he had already tested the eye in secret. Some swore they saw him one night, standing alone under the desert sky, the sphere in his hands. And in that moment, the constellations above seemed to shift, just slightly, like a curtain being drawn. What happened after, no one can say for certain, but by the time the ministry sent inspectors a month later, the vault was empty. The black eye was gone. And so, the last physical link to the Sumerian map of the undiscovered planet vanished, not into the pages of history, but into the shadowy realm of whispered rumors and untraceable legends. Somewhere out there, it might still exist. And if the tablets are right, when the waters rise and the lights return, someone will know exactly where to look. And so, the last of the artifacts was sealed away, hidden in the deep archives where no curious hands could reach. The inscriptions spoke of cycles, not years or centuries, but ages, each ending with a great unmaking. And always at the center, a single name appeared, carved in stone older than the deserts, whispered in tongues older than memory. Ninhursag, a name we thought belonged only to myth. Yet here it was again, bound to the same symbols we had seen before, in a chamber half a world away. Was this coincidence? Or a warning? If the stones speak true, then what we uncovered is not a relic of the past, but a harbinger of the next turn in the cycle. A cycle we are already living in, whether we choose to see it or not. And somewhere, in the silence between earth and sky, the same eyes that watched the first dawn are watching still.